Patoy! The video's starting! Just like we practiced, okay? Hey there everyone! It's me, Justin11 3D, back with a new update video. I'm sure many of you have seen that, alongside this video. I have also uploaded a 14-hour supercut of me playing Hollow Knight Silksong. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of you have already grabbed their torches and pitchforks to get an answer to the age-old question of what the heck happened to Sonic Chronicles Reimagined? Well, I don't know how to tell this to y'all, but like, I play more games than just Sonic. Shocking, I know, but I digress. I'm here today to answer your questions. And to make sure I get to see the light of tomorrow. And not just that, I'm here today to talk about all my projects, not just Sonic Chronicles. But if you're only here to know if the fan game is still alive, yes, it is not cancelled, it's still being worked on, just not actively at this very moment. I do have a concrete plan of when to continue development, and I'll provide more details on that further into the video. But what actually is this video? Well, this is my attempt at a solution for the years of silence. Fans of Chronicles Reimagined are more than familiar, but I kind of haven't been making regular updates on the project here since, well, basically since 2018. To put it bluntly, I was young and stupid, and hindsight tells me that making a new video after every tiny addition was maybe not the best approach, especially with how undercooked these additions often looked. As I grew older and gathered more experience in programming, 3D modeling, and many other game dev related skills, the level of quality I desired for my update videos kind of outpaced what I was able to deliver. At some point, I decided that I'd only publish a new video on the project once there was enough content for somebody to look at and say, hey, this actually looks fun to play. But, alas, the game has not yet reached that point. And while we do provide other ways to learn about our progress, namely Discord and Blue Sky, and before that Twitter, many do not have access to those platforms, and were only met with total silence on this channel. In further hindsight, that too was not the solution. There's also the problem that, over the years, I've worked on more than just Sonic Chronicles Reimagined. Throughout the years were large periods of time where the game had not received any update whatsoever, which means I wasn't able to make an update video in the first place. That's why I've decided to make some changes. I intend to, at the very minimum, make one big update video every year, to talk about everything I worked on for that past year, not just Chronicles. This not only gives me the opportunity to update everyone on how the fan game is going, but also to talk about my other projects. A win-win situation, I hope. With that said, today's video is special, as I'll not only cover this year, but every year, starting with this channel's debut, 2017. I'll start by covering a timeline of when I worked on which project, followed by each project's current status, and ending with a roadmap of what I want to achieve next. Past, present and future. I'll also go more in depth about Sonic Chronicles specifically, and give more info on basically everything there is to give info about. But before that, I should probably give an overview of which projects I even have. There's 4 that I consider my main projects. Number 1, my fan game, Sonic Chronicles Reimagined. A modern remake of the first and only Sonic RPG released for the Nintendo DS in 2008. Not one-to-one, as a lot is being changed, but still very much based on the original. Number 2, Sonic Adventure Blender IO, or SAIO, an add-on for the 3D modeling software Blender to add support for loading and saving model file formats from the Sonic Adventure games. Number 3, Hedgehog Engine Blender IO, or HEIO, the recently created sibling project to SAIO, which adds support to Blender for loading and saving model file formats from Hedgehog Engine games, like Sonic Unleashed or the Generations titles. And last but not least, number 4, the 3D Chao Viewer, a web application available on Chao Island that simulates how Chao, from the Sonic Adventure games, alter their looks. I've also worked on numerous smaller projects, but those were often sub-projects to any of the 4 already mentioned ones, like the ML Discord bot I made for the Sonic Chronicles Reimagined Discord server, or the SA3D programming library that is used by SAIO. Alright. Before we start the timeline, I want to note that it is structured by what I was focusing on at the time, and not how focused I was. There were times in which I worked on something so diligently I forgot to eat and sleep. And there were times where nothing happened at all, sometimes for multiple days in a row. I only mention time gaps like that if they happen between projects. I also want to note that this segment is long. If you are not interested in what happened the past 9 years and just want to know the current status of my projects, feel free to skip ahead. With that said, let's rewind time back to January 2017. You must be wondering, Justin, you uploaded the first videos in summer of 2017. What is there to cover in January? Well, I want to tell how the story started, even if it's a bit simple. 2016 had just come to an end, and I, at the ripe age of 15, set myself the New Year's resolution of learning Blender. I had seen a creature modeling time-lapse on YouTube and was so mesmerized by the entire process that I really wanted to learn how to make 3D models myself. I had dabbled with other content creation programs before, like SketchUp, or simply by creating stuff in Spore and Minecraft, but I had never used a program as complicated as Blender before. I did give it a shot in the past, but it looked incredibly intimidating every time I opened it, and I just wasn't able to wrap my head around it. But this time I stubbornly set at the task. The first few months were spent rigorously learning how to operate this foreign piece of tech, until I was finally able to put together models that looked like something. Yet, something was better than nothing. It was around April when I first started taking interest in video game development. I started watching Unreal Engine tutorials, but unfortunately the official videos only ever explained how to use assets to create environments, and never how to write custom logic, which eventually annoyed me enough that I dropped Unreal Engine altogether. But then summer rolled around and I decided to give it another shot, this time with Unity. Lo and behold, they actually made programming tutorials for beginners. I spent all of July watching tutorials and building up knowledge. I still remember watching one particular video on repeat for a whole week until it finally clicked in my brain. Entering August, I decided that it's time I programmed something myself, without just copying from the tutorials. Unsure of what I could even do, I thought to recreate some existing game. And it just so happened that I was playing through Sonic Chronicles, The Dark Brotherhood again at the time. At the peak of the Dunning-Kruger curve, I felt confident that, out of all things, I could create an RPG as my first game, and did not hesitate to start. This was the birth of my first project, Sonic Chronicles Remastered. 2 weeks later, I finally had something that you could look at and say, hey, that reminds me of Sonic Chronicles. At which point I decided to upload my first YouTube video. I kept making more baby steps, each one exciting me enough to make a whole video about it. Until by some insane coincidence, YouTube recommended me a remix of some Sonic Chronicles soundtrack, which mentioned in the description that they were working on a remake of Sonic Chronicles with several others. I decided to reach out and share my progress with them. Their team, led by Granivolus, had not yet started working on the actual game, and prioritized planning until I got all the necessary team members. Since I was missing people to help me out in the first place, and they were still missing somebody with programming and 3D modeling experience, we decided to join forces to make this game a reality, together. Some months pass, and while I still uploaded videos every now and then, their frequency already started decreasing. Then, in early November, I learned how to make models blend between shapes in Unity. Upon using this feature for the first time, I had a brain blast. I could recreate the Chao model system. After managing to get my hands on Chao models and textures, I immediately started work on what I would name the 3D Chao viewer and didn't hesitate to share progress updates on my channel. Unfortunately, I knew basically nothing about how Chao worked on a technical level, on top of the Sonic Adventure 2 model modding scene not even being a thing yet. And yet, I still made do with what little I had, creating a layered texture system in an attempt to emulate how Child and Hero Chao changed their color, while receiving help with screen wrapping the animal parts and other models. Despite the limited resources available to me, I managed to put together version 1.0 of the Chao viewer a bit before the year ended, and uploaded it to the Chao Island forums for everyone to use. But the app wasn't done yet. A lot was still missing or not working correctly, like animal parts, masks, reflective Chao, etc. and I spent the first 2 weeks of 2018 implementing these last few features. The final update saw the light of day on January 13th, after which I returned to work on Chronicles again. Working on the Chao viewer taught me some things about Unity, in this case about UI programming. I decided to apply this knowledge to Chronicles by reprogramming all the UI code I made so far. This is kind of gonna become a recurring theme in the first few years. I pause work on Sonic Chronicles for another project, until I return with new knowledge in hand that I immediately want to apply. In early February, Chao, the owner of the Chao Island website, reached out to me and asked if I wanted a download of the viewer to be hosted directly on the website. But I had a better idea. Unity supported exporting projects as web applications, so I suggested we make the Chao viewer playable directly in the browser, and Chao agreed, though not without some changes. If I wanted my app to be a main attraction of the website, then the UI would need to see some improvements first. Though, before that, I wanted to finish some Chronicles related things first. I continued working on the UI rewrite and uploading new videos until the middle of March, which was when I finally got to improve the Chao viewer for its browser debut. I also got to work together with Accent64. I'll talk more about him in a bit. He provided me models and textures of Chao Garden fruit, toys and more, which I made renders of using Blender for the Chao Island website, which was in the middle of being renovated. I got back to Chronicles shortly after, and spent the time working on 3D models and improving my modeling skills. Sometime in summer, I joined a Discord focusing on Sonic fan art, where I met other experienced 3D modelers who were able to help me further improve my 3D, texture and lighting work. In July, I caught wind of Exxon learning to program mods for Sonic Adventure 2. We had met each other at the very end of 2017. I had shared my Chao viewer progress in the Chao Discord server, which he noticed and asked how I got model morphing to work in Unity. Over the following months of working together on Chao Island and more, we became good friends, and when I saw him get into Sonic Adventure 2 modding, something I had always wished to do myself, I didn't hesitate to ask him to teach me, which he did. After a week of learning the basics, he recommended I join the X-Hacks Discord server, where basically all the known Sonic Adventure modders gathered. With all the help I was getting, I was able to create my first 2 mods, Character Select Plus and the Chao Data Menu mod. I made a video showcasing them in August, and then returned to work on Chronicles again. The remaining year was mostly spent working on 3D stuff for Chronicles, and I also designed the first proper project logo in this time frame. This is also the first time period in which I got less work done than before, for various reasons. Though, one more notable thing happened this year. In September specifically, a user going by the name of Gecklo reached out to me via Discord.
Yo.
I had seen his name float around on the previously mentioned Chao Discord, but I had never seen him active. He asked me if we still needed composers for Sonic Chronicles Remastered, and showed me remixes he had made, which were miles ahead from anything that was made for the project so far, so I immediately got him on the team. This would later have grave consequences on my life, already starting in November, which was when I made and uploaded a modeling timelapse of Yash, Gecklo's Chao sidekick. Sort of like Sparta here. For the most part, 2019 started how 2018 had ended, focusing on 3D stuff for Chronicles. At some point in March, I decided to reprogram the UI a second time, and I got to finish the map menu right after, which altogether took around a month to do. Afterwards, more 3D stuff yet again. Around this time frame, I had also gotten considerably better at making 3D models and renders. It was then that I made my, in my opinion, best 3D renders of Sonic, of which I am still incredibly proud of. They are also my most recent Sonic 3D renders. I just kind of didn't make any new ones since then. The months pass, progress moves slowly, and August rolls around, which was when I made the last proper update video on Sonic Chronicles Remastered. Shortly thereafter, I set my sights on other goals. Sonic Adventure 2 model modding. To me, the ability to modify and create stages or characters was always the holy grail of SA2 modding. Accent and others from the X-Hacks Discord had already started work on making this a reality, and I desperately wanted to help. So that's exactly what I did. I started by reading the modloader supplied C headers and asking X-Hacks members about how the formats worked, to then document those findings in a Google spreadsheet. Once I had gathered all the info I needed, I started writing a Python add-on for Blender that would add import and export options for Sonic Adventure models. This would come to be known as the Blender SA Support add-on, and I released the first version in late October, which would mark the dawn of the Sonic Adventure model modding era. Coinciding with the release, I also published an HD Sonic model mod for SA2, followed by a Shade the Echidna mod shortly after. I continued working on the add-on until December, after which I worked on both the add-on and Chronicles sort of simultaneously. This continued until February of 2020, which was when the add-on and SA2 modding were my primary focus again. I mostly spent my time researching SA2's internals, to then make use of that newfound knowledge in the add-on. Then, at the very end of March, I basically handed off development of the add-on to It's Easy Actually, another modder and tool developer over at X-Hacks, so that I could return to Sonic Chronicles Remastered. This had a reason. A bit of a problem had crystallized itself on our public Discord, where several members complained about how, for bearing the subtitle Remastered, we were changing too many things away from the original game. And the team kind of agreed. The name was no longer fitting. Thus, not long after, we renamed the project to Sonic Chronicles Reimagined. And with this, we also changed how we approached the project as a whole. This newly unlocked creative freedom gave me a big motivation to work on the game again. After some more 3D modeling work, I wanted to try my hand at the battle system logic, but in a way that would allow the other team members to collaborate on testing it. The idea was simple: implement the battle system on a Discord bot. So, I spent the next month and a half working on our own Discord bot. But unfortunately, we never made the system work. Yet, the bot remained and helped out in other ways on the server, and would gain more significance later. The remainder of June was just spent planning the project, which culminated in me finally redesigning the UI to look more sleek and modern. The designs made at the time are still in use today. In August, I once again started working on 3D related things for the project. Not just models, but also shaders and textures. I also want to mention that I finished school back in May, and started my 3-year apprenticeship as a software developer in late August. It was around the start of November when the first genuine nothing happened block makes its appearance. Truth be told, I do not remember much of what happened this long ago, so I have to dig deep into old Discord chats to find out what I spent my time with. And it just seems that nothing happened the entirety of November. Except for the fact that Gecklo got me to play Hollow Knight, and also showed me trailers for the sequel, titled Hollow Knight Silksong. This too would have grave consequences in the future. A few days into December, I started work on what I'd call the Translation Editor, a tool with which we would manage all the text in Chronicles, as well as make it easier for translators to translate them later. I had tried my hand on such a tool before, but those previous attempts ended up being subpar, to say the least. Moving into 2021, I also started making a dedicated tool for creating the non-linear dialogues that make up a core element of Sonic Chronicles gameplay. I continued working on these tools until March, at which point I decided to dedicate my time specifically to developing SA3D, which was a new set of tools for Sonic Adventure 3D modding. I had previously worked on it in smaller pockets of free time, but this time I decided to place my focus on it. This only lasted 2 weeks, before I returned to Chronicles again, and started reprogramming the UI one more time, entirely from ground up. Until I entered another period of nothing in early July, broken by something new. Gecklo was working on a remix of the Golden Sun Overworld theme, for which I offered to make a 3D diorama and audio visualizer. He took up on the offer, and I spent the next 3 days putting it together. This was followed by 6 weeks of modding Sonic Adventure 2 again. I only really researched and reverse engineered how the game worked, without actually creating any mods. What can I say? I just like digging through the game's internal workings. October was once again spent on rewriting the UI code for Chronicles, as well as finishing the journal menu. After finishing the rewrite at the end of October, I went back to working on 3D art for the game, primarily creating assets for the Chao garden menu and learning more about how to write shaders in Unity. In the middle of November, Gecklo approached me to ask whether I would like to help out with another 3D diorama for a new remix of his, to which I happily agreed. It was his Sinnoh Frontier Brain remix, for which I made and animated a 3D model of the Gen 4 Battle Frontier. This only took 10 days, after which I got right back to Chronicles. Most of early 2022 I kept working on shaders and perfecting my procedural grass generator. Later in March I returned to work on the translation and dialogue editor tools, as I had yet to properly finish them. I did take a short detour in June and turned our Geekside Discord bot into a proper community bot that supports leveling, moderator tools, etc. The main reason behind this was that our previous bot for server levels, Me6, now demanded payments to unlock some of the previously free features. We said nope, wrote our own bot, migrated the levels, and kicked Me6 off the server. Once the bot was done, work on the tools continued until the start of July. This was when the biggest block of nothing started, lasting until September. The only notable thing that did happen was that I ported our Discord bot's code, which we had now decided to just call ML instead, from JavaScript to TypeScript, which only took a couple days. Then, in September, I started work on a small personal project. Splatoon 3 was about to release, and I had found a Splatoon 3 fan concept from 2019 by Alexis Flaum. I just loved the character art for the Inkling Onyxa so much that I decided to make a 3D model of her, which took me a bit longer than 2 months. These are the most recent renders I made of anything, and I am still incredibly proud of how they look. This is also when we finally crossed my brain's memory threshold. I can still remember everything that happened since starting work on Onyxa very vividly, and no longer have to research as deeply to put this timeline together. It had turned November, and I was about to start work on Sonic Chronicles Reimagined again. But then I contracted COVID. It rendered me completely unable to work for a couple days. And once I was able to work on my computer again, my brain was still too muzzy to start churning out new code. But I didn't just want to lie in bed twiddling my thumbs, so I opted to just do some SA2 reverse engineering and SA3D programming, as those did not demand as much of my brain power. But while doing that, I saw the state of the Blender add-on I had written years ago. Being one of my first projects, it was in pretty bad shape, and I had now progressed my SA3D code to a point that I could use it to create a new, better Blender add-on. So that is what I started doing, and it would occupy me for a good while. To be specific, it occupied me until late November of 2023. I have even made a dedicated video to showcase this new tool, which I named Sonic Adventure Blender I/O, or SAIO for short. Since I have already made a video dedicated to this project, I don't want to get too in-depth here, but there are some additional things I still want to mention. A great portion of the time spent working on this project was not just writing the add-on code itself, but conducting even deeper research of how the Sonic Adventure games worked under the hood. I focused on looking into how texture archives and SA2 cutscenes worked, and wrote code to handle their file formats accordingly. All of those things still made it into the add-on of course, but I also published these libraries publicly on NuGet, in case anyone else wanted to try writing their own Sonic Adventure tools using C#. Finally, a few days into December, I had finished my work on SAIO and was able to return to Sonic Chronicles Reimagined at last. However, while working on the new add-on, Unity Technologies decided to destroy any and all trust they had built up by suddenly changing their terms of service. Developers that made their games with Unity would now have to pay a fee per installation of their game, unless some predatory conditions were met. They did revert this decision, and it would ultimately not have affected us, as our fan game wouldn't have been monetized in any way. But neither our team, nor I myself, wanted to use Unity any longer. Who knows what kind of crap that would come up with next. This is when we decided to switch over to Godot, which had seen a surge in popularity thanks to Unity's decision making. As such, in December, I started rewriting the project for the Godot engine. I used this opportunity to apply some programming principles I had learned in the past year. Primarily, I would no longer do the mistake of working on multiple ends at once. Before, I always tried working on all required components at the same time, which made a mess of the code and the project as a whole. So this time, I would write placeholder code for stuff like language switching or file saving and just focused on bringing over the UI. Oh, and I finished my apprenticeship around July and started my career as a full-time software developer. 2024 rolled around and I kept bringing the game to Godot. This new approach did wonders, and I not only managed to port over all of the UI, but also finished parts that had been left unfinished, like the profile menu. Porting continued until June, when suddenly my Raspberry Pi, which hosted the project's website as well as the Discord bot, started breaking down. After getting a new Pi, I decided I'd also reprogram the bot in C#, a language I am much more comfortable with. The only reason I didn't use C# before was because I've had troubles getting .NET programs to run on Linux, but no longer. Porting the code took 2 weeks, and the bot has been running since without problem. I continued work on SCR for another month and finished porting the last few things, after which I went back to SIIO for a month to fix some bugs and implement some new features that were now needed. After finishing work on the add-on in late August, I decided to restart work on the translation editor one final time. But this time, I decided to use Avalonia, a cross-platform UI framework for C#, so that it wouldn't matter which operating system our translators were using. It took until the end of September, but I eventually finished the editor and released it proper for everyone to use. It was also then that we decided to move the project's social media presence from Twitter to Blue Sky, as Twitter had changed into a platform we no longer wanted to share our progress on, despite the 10,000 followers we had built up. Next would be the dialogue editor, but as I thought about reprogramming the dialogue editor using Avalonia as well, I had a better idea. I would instead create the dialogue editor as a Godot tool. This would tightly integrate the dialogue creation process with the actual project and ensure a faster development pipeline. So I got to work on it and basically finished the editor in the middle of October. I wanted to work on the actual in-game dialogue system next, but the fire that kept me going was starting to dwindle by this point. For the past year, I had worked on this project with an unprecedented focus, and now that focus was starting to fade. Coincidentally, Shadow Generations was about to release and I was eager to play it. And after playing it, a new spark had once again formed within me. A spark that desired to create a stage mod, a Sky Rail stage mod. I had no plans to start work on this yet, but I still went to Gecklo and asked him whether he would like to make a remix of the Sky Rail soundtrack for this future mod, to which he excitedly agreed. Apparently, my spark jumped over to him and ignited a fire, because just a couple days later he returned to me with the first draft for the soundtrack. He also said he'd love to help out with the stage layout, and suddenly this initial spark burst into a flame of my own, and my body commanded me to work on this right now. I started looking into Hedgehog engine modding. Fortunately, Shadow Generations reuses almost everything from Frontiers, so basically all tools made prior could still be used here. Yet, as I tried to get a grasp on how to use these tools to make a custom stage, it kind of felt unpolished. Not that it was impossible to create full and proper mods with these tools, but I kept running into issues that were really annoying to work around, at least personally. So, despite promising the Chronicles team that I wouldn't get into tool development for Hedgehog engine modding, I did. And oh boy did I. Let me introduce the newest addition to the family, Hedgehog Engine Blender IO, or HEIO for short. I basically decided to use the experience I gained when creating SIIO to make an equivalent Blender add-on for Hedgehog engine games. I kept working on this new add-on through early 2025, and with the help of Scythe and other Hedgehog engine modding veterans, I managed to put together a version with most needed features sometime around spring. While working on Sonic Chronicles Reimagined and HEIO, I received much feedback from the Sonic Adventure 2 modding community regarding SIIO and its documentation. So this time, for HEIO, I would pour in a lot of effort to get the documentation right from the get-go, even writing beginner tutorials for character and stage mods. To assist with Shadow Generations model creation, I wanted to create Blender material templates for all shaders the game uses, which is easier said than done. My goal was to create a template for each shader before publishing the first full release of the add-on, and started dedicating time to reverse engineering the shaders, starting at the end of April. I had a rough start and did not achieve much for almost 2 months, mainly because of how I tried to approach it. I wanted to make a full shader and model previewer tool, but every time I made one step forward, I made 2 steps back. Finally, in June, I decided to throw the tool in the garbage and opted to test in-game instead. I initially wanted to avoid doing it this way, given how I'd need to restart the game every time I wanted to test a shader, but that was much more achievable than writing a dedicated tool like I had planned earlier. I simply wrote a shader compiler and used that with the game directly. Almost 2 months later, I had finally gotten through the overhead and managed to reverse engineer the first few material shaders. I decided to fully document how they worked in the recently created Hedgedogs wiki, of which I was a strong advocate, so that everyone could make use of these shaders without having to guess how to use them. I managed to reverse engineer and fully document 23 shaders, until the unthinkable happened in September. Hollow Knight Silksong released. Almost every day for a year now I had been spending time together with Gecklo, watching anime and playing games together, like Dark Souls and Elden Ring. But for this, for Silksong, we shook our virtual hands, turned around, vanished in our rooms, locked the doors, and did not talk until both of us had finished playing this new game. Additionally, both of us recorded our gameplay, which we plan to make a supercut of to share our experiences with one another, as well as upload them on YouTube eventually. This is what I've been doing the past 2.5 months, editing my Silksong supercut. Working on a video like that was a huge undertaking, and I could probably have done many things better, but I am still very happy with the result. And with this, we finally arrive in the present, December 2025. Well, technically, I'd still have to add like 3 or 4 weeks to the timeline that I spent editing this video you are watching right now, but that would overcomplicate things. So, after all this, how exactly do these projects look like at this very moment? Sonic Adventure Blender IO is still going strong. Kinda. Well, over these last 1.5 years, many developments have been made in the Sonic Adventure 2 modding scene, and everything that needs to be done for the add-on has been documented on its GitHub issues page. Hedgehog Engine Blender IO has yet to release proper, and everyone using it is still running the development build. I only really have to change a thing or two, and then the 1.0 release is basically ready. My initial goal of reverse engineering all Shadow Generations shaders so I could create material templates for version 1.0 was foolish, and I decided to postpone that goal for a future release. You might think I have nothing to say about the Chao viewer, right? Well, despite it being the one thing I am, somehow, most known for, I really do not like looking at it anymore. It has a terrible UI design, I could not have done textures and body part offsets any worse, and the entire thing still runs in Unity. I have learned a lot about how Chao work in the original adventure games since, and am more than capable of creating a new and better Chao viewer already, but I don't want to dedicate my time away from my other projects any more than I already do. Perhaps once I get more Sonic Chronicles Reimagined work done, I'll see about making version 3.0 finally happen. Here we are! Sonic Chronicles Reimagined. The one thing I bet everyone wants to know where it is right now. As mentioned in the timeline already, everything important was successfully ported over to Godot, and some things progressed even further. To be specific, following components are 100% fully finished. The main menu, the settings menu, the save menu, the inventory menu, the profile menu, and the journal menu. Additionally, the dialogue editor is mostly finished, just not the in-game dialogue system itself. The translation editor, which we use to manage texts, is also fully functional and need not be touched anymore. Now, that's great and all, but many of you are probably wondering, wait, that's all just user interfaces. Where's the overworld and the battle systems? Well, here's the thing. Sonic Chronicles, as a game to develop, consists of 3 major components: the framework, the content creation tools, and the content itself. To be able to create content, we need to get the framework and tools running first. And since Sonic Chronicles is an RPG, more than half of its framework consists of the UI. Running around in the overworld is, on a technical level, a minor component compared to the menus, hence why I prioritize making the UI over everything else first. And the battle system is kind of separate to everything else, which is why that comes last. As for tools, Godot already supplies most of what's needed, but as mentioned before, we still need to make some additional tools specific to our framework. We did already work on content, such as item textures and music, but those will need to wait before getting inserted into the actual game. And while the overworld and battles are the more interesting thing to look at, they are not really worth anything when you don't have the underlying systems working first. And now you might say, okay, but even then, why the heck is this taking so long? It's been almost 9 years. Right, so the thing is, you can basically ignore everything that happened before the Godot porting efforts. Everything that happened between 2017 and late 2023 should be considered a bunch of amateurs learning what it takes to make a game. Because that's what all of us were. And probably still are. It already took until mid-2021 for my code to reach a level of quality where I could look at it a few months later and say, yep, still looks good. Everything before that was essentially a big publicized learning experience, and in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have shared progress on the project this early on. And yet, at the same time, I do not regret having made the decisions that I did. Because if I hadn't, then I wouldn't have met all these great people that helped me make this game a reality, let alone any of my other projects. All I can say is, do not worry, I won't abandon Sonic Chronicles Reimagined. That is a promise that I made not only to the fans of this project, but also to myself. I will not abandon Sonic Chronicles Reimagined. It will see the light of day. Just, it might take a while to get there. I can't say when it will be ready, but it will eventually. That's a promise. The next dedicated update video is still gonna be a while away, but fortunately that's not the only platform on which we share updates. Small updates get uploaded to our Blue Sky profile, and you can always join the Sonic Chronicles Reimagined Discord server to ask us directly. All links can be found on our website, sonicchroniclesreimagined.com. Okay, after all this, what are my goals for the near future? Well, I have made a roadmap for myself. First, I want to get back to AGIO for a short moment to get it working on the newest Blender version 5.0, as well as correct some minor technical things, so that I can finally release version 1.0. This shouldn't take longer than a few days. Next, I wanted to get back to SAIO and work through the GitHub issues list. It's been on my mind for a while now and has been taking a spot in my brain all this time, which is why I want to get it back into a state in which I can leave it be for a while again. After that, it's finally time to get back to Sonic Chronicles Reimagined. Though only shortly, sort of. I want to finish work on the dialogue system, so that our writers can start writing dialogues for the game, and our artists can start work on the portrait artworks. It's a bit difficult to know which character emotion combinations need doing without having the needed dialogues, hence why not much has happened there yet. Once that is done, it's back to AGIO. For version 1.1, I wanted to add support for lights and light meshes, as well as some other HG1 specific model formats, and version 1.2 would add animation support. I originally wanted to implement these features after reverse engineering all shadow generation shaders, but that is a bigger undertaking that will take more time, hence why I'm postponing those for now. But not for long, because once AGIO version 1.2 is released, I want to get back to reverse engineering and documenting shadow generation shaders. This is, at the very least, my concrete plan for the immediate future. After that, it's a bit up in the air what I will do next, as I never know which direction my motivation will sway in. But the main possible options are create more tools needed for shadow generation stage modding, and finally get to making the Sky Rail stage mod as Gecklo and I envision it. I could also start work on the remaining menus in Sonic Chronicles Reimagined. Or I could finally start work on the Chao viewer version 3.0. With so much change, I think it's time to clean up my channel a bit. All of these old videos no longer accurately represent what I do, or even want to do. Hence why I will unlist them after this video releases. I will still make them available to the public though. They will still be accessible through playlists on my channel. I just don't want newcomers to the channel to get a false impression of myself. But I also understand the historic value of keeping these videos up and available. That's it! You've reached the end of the video. I greatly appreciate everyone who is still sticking around, even after all these years. I hope that no one is disappointed by how I keep jumping between projects. I simply have too many interests and things I want to do. But going forward, I want to try and keep the number of things I work on limited. I highly doubt that I'm suddenly gonna jump dive into any new modding communities again. Nonetheless, that's all from me. You will, at the very latest, hear from me again next December. Until then, have a great day and see you all around. Bye!